Hello. Well, welcome to part 2 of trying to fix this N1502 video recorder. In part 1 we changed it from being just a wreck to something that plays tapes, but we have a problem with the colour. Though there is a colour picture, you may be able to make out there's a vertical band there with sort of purple and green in it. There we go, you can see it quite clearly there. In my previous work on this, I'd swapped out this entire panel, but it's possible that the panel I fitted is the carrier of this fault, because the first panel had no colour at all. So I've borrowed another panel from a machine that was not intended to be scrapped, but right now we just need to isolate where the fault is. So let's fit a replacement here and see if we can get a colour picture without that horrible stripy line. So fortunately it's not too hard to swap over the signals panel. Okay, I've swapped that panel over. It is somewhat confusing because there are several sockets on this that are not used, so you need to be a bit careful, and one of the plugs would fit into two sockets. So anyhow, hopefully I've got that correct. Not all these labels are still on the plugs, the cables, unfortunately, but if I've got it right, hopefully we'll get something. Well, I'm not sure I was expecting that. I've got a black and white picture. That's quite disappointing. Swapped over two panels from its original board, or the board that was given as colour. No. Let me just check something. The tuning may not be exact because of course it's using a modulator. Now we have colour with that strange colour band. Alright, since that was a little inconclusive, let's try one more panel. What do we have? We have colour. You know what? I'm not seeing that fault. Colour on this particular program is not very strong, but I'm not seeing that colour fault. Wow. Right, let me. I noticed earlier that the tracking upset the colour quite a lot on the other boards, or it isn't on this one. It has to be well off tracking in order to lose the colour. Oh wow, made some progress. So it appears to be that colour faults are fairly common on these machines, though I've never had them before. That's solid. That's working. Oh good. So what's outstanding on this? We need to fit AV output sockets, and we need to replace this record play switch here. And I'm inclined to raid one of those out of a scrap N1700 rather than one of these 1502s. So I'll, unless I can swap the whole panel over, but I don't think that's a particularly easy job. And as it works, I don't really want to mess it up, so I think we'll get a scrap machine to give us one of those switches. Okay, here's the servo panel from a scrap N1700. So they're not interchangeable, these panels. But the switch should be. I think it's got the same amount of pins. So I will desolder that and solder it onto here. It's single-sided PCB. What would be the best route? Desolder pump, maybe? Yes, let's work on the assumption we use a desolder pump. Interesting looking at these. This one, pin 1 is at this end and works around to 9, up to 10, and then it goes 11 to 19. And this is completely different. This is 1 to 9 and then 10 to 18. So I don't know why they've labelled them completely differently, but the switches themselves hopefully are the same. Different colour, but I think it's the same switch. One other item which I've installed since part 1 was I dropped in one of these tuner covers, just the cosmetic thing there. Oh, and this is a diagram for the AV output circuit, which I'll be adding later. I was concerned that the nozzle on this is somewhat smaller than the pins on the switch. I'm not sure this is going to work then. Okay, I have the switch from the 1700, but that was a little bit brutal. I didn't mind doing that with a scrap board, but I'm not sure I want to go through all that on this board. What's going to be the best way to take the old switch out? I think I have to do more or less the same. Hot air gun. Okay, there's the broken switch that someone had snapped the actuator off. And here's our replacement. Having done that, let's check that we still have good playback. Okay, so what it is, it's this record play switch we've replaced. Now we're never going to want to use record, but I didn't want a faulty switch being in there that could slide and cause it to erase a tape potentially. Good, let's check for sound. We have a good working N1500, 1502. So next I want to fit AV output sockets. Now that's a bit of a pain, making up the circuit board, which I've done on a previous one where you see me working on the Frantic Scantic, which is a 1700. Do you like the freeze frame? It can sometimes be a perfect freeze frame on these because they they had guard bands on the tracks, whereas N1700 they didn't, and so a two-head machine couldn't give you a perfect freeze frame on 1700, so they didn't have the stop motion feature. Right. Last time I did a AV output mod on one of these, I made the strip board too small, and I ran out of space for the components. So this time I'll be a lot more generous with the board space. This is the video output amplifier I've built. Following this diagram, I'll provide a link below. So this is not mine. Stefan Heimers is the person who did this. There's a Mark II and Mark III version with S video output, but I actually prefer the composite video for use with my timebase correctors. Now a couple of small modifications. There's too much gain on this, I find, so I've put a 2K preset on the input, and this output from that then feeds the circuit. Added an extra decoupling capacitor across the input. I think he's just made a mistake there, I missed that one out. He's put in 47 nanofarad, but I've got 100 nanofarad capacitors to hand. He's used BC550s and I use BC548B, I think they are, so very similar component. So this is, oh yes, he's got, he uses this for Luma, and then this for chroma, but in my case I'm going to be using this for composite. It's the same circuit. So next I need to drill some holes and fit some sockets in the back of the machine, and test all this. Looking here at the modulator, it's beautifully labelled. So, I mean, you don't get this anymore. So the picture comes in on the label P for picture, and if you look here, it's labelled CVBS, Composite Video Blanking and Sync. So that's picture, but that's not a normal video signal, so that's why we need this buffer circuit. Then we need 12 volts, which is very easy to pick up here, and also we're going to feed audio out to the audio connector, and that's on this one labelled S for sound. Sound, picture, 12 volt. And of course, ground we can pick up from here. Right, let's put that wiring in. Okay, so we have our little circuit here ready to mount in the bottom of the machine, but I just need to set the gain up first. But first thing I'll do is make sure that we still get a picture from the RF output, but I haven't upset anything with that. Okay, we have picture and sound there. And let's try the AV outputs. And straight away we get picture and sound on that too. I'd set the gain control roughly midway, and it doesn't look like it's too far out compared to what it looked like from modulator. Maybe a bit bright. Seems to be working, but there's a little bit of tape instability. I'll just tidy everything up, clean the audio control head, and rerun the tape a bit, because that might be part of the problem. But it looks like it's working. Few cosmetics still to do, but we're basically there now. Let's fit this board in the bottom of the machine. I think what I'm going to do, just to eliminate something, is disconnect my AV circuit and just use the modulator output. Yes, it is upsetting it. So that 2K preset resistor I've put in the input is too low a value. I need a higher value component in there. Change that 2K preset to something like 5K or so. Okay, I want to have a look at the Capstan servo issue, or they call it tape servo. There's only 2 presets on the board, but even having read the manual, it's not terribly obvious which is which. And furthermore, it's a little bit hard to get to them when the board is in use. What I'm going to have to do is try to adjust them at the same time as holding this switch down, which is all a bit awkward. Oh yeah, I can access them through the can, yes, just about. Mind you, I won't be able to see my markings to put them back to their present positions. Now, I've chosen a tape here that seems to cause the problem more than another one I've got, where the tape just runs fast. Actually, I had one of these completely fail once, and the IC failed, and the Capstan servo just stopped completely. It was playing a tape and it just stopped one day. I'm going to have to just adjust them like that whilst holding that. A little bit fiddly. Let's see what I can do. Right, we can see that's going much too fast. That one didn't seem to do it. Nor did that. I think we'll change that module over. So this is the original one, and it's got one small IC and a handful of transistors. and this is the one we're fitting, which has a much bigger IC and lots more transistors and some various bodge wires in there. That's fitted. Let's see if it plays this difficult tape. Adjust the tracking. No, same problem. It's playing very fast. Oh. Let's refit the original board. The audio control block feels very slightly sloppy on its mount. I'm just going to check that. Right, another go with our tape that usually plays okay. Don't know. But the board around here, which is the servo area, does look quite dirty, so I think I'll give that a clean, see if it gets me anywhere at all. Right, I found that the speed wanders erratically if I touch the wiring to the back of the audio control head. So I'm going to see if I can have a closer look. I may have to replace the audio and control head, which is absolutely no fun at all. So I've released the circlips in the front and back of this arm. Can't quite remember what I have to do to take the whole arm off. Yes, there's a circlip down here you have to remove. That releases a spring down there. Right. You can take the whole arm off. Okay, I've installed the audio control head from a scrap N1700. Of course, we don't know if it's any better, but we'll have to give it a whirl. No, it's all over the place still. Oh. Why is it going so fast? The free speed must be way off the free run speed. Well, problems remain with the servos on this, and I don't think I've got a set of these boards, because this is the what they call the tape servo, Capstan servo. These are other boards associated with the servo system, as well as this can here, which is the Capstan servo. They call it tape servo. There's the head servo, but that's working fine. But there are three other boards here. I mean, there's a ramp generator, and I'm not quite sure what the other three are. So I'm going to swap out these other three boards with ones from another machine that has the same type. And I have had a problem that some of my spare machines have completely different boards here, and they're not interchangeable. So I've had to select something that's got the same set. Okay. And by the way, in case I hadn't mentioned it earlier, I changed the audio control head and all its cabling with one from another machine. There's a horrible little screw on the bottom of this, and on this one the screw thread was stripped, and this one had been glued into place on the previous machine, wonkily. But because the screw thread was stripped, I had to glue it into place on this machine too. So I may yet change this arm, or change that head again, but that's not the cause of my problem. So let's just try to fix this servo issue. I don't have to change this whole board because there's a lot of wiring involved. There's not a great deal on that board. There is some circuitry though. Right, let's see if we're lucky. If we are, I'll pin down exactly which of those cans is the cause of the problem. Alright, wish me luck. No, still running fast. So I could replace this entire panel, but there's no proof that the fault is on that panel. I don't suppose I have much choice. It's not the easiest thing to change because there's a lot of quite tight wiring here. There's also a big spring at the bottom you have to connect up. So it's not much fun to change this one. Oh, by the way, you might wonder how it is that I've come to the conclusion this is an electronic fault and nothing to do with the audio control head. And here's the answer to that. And I came to this conclusion about 3 o'clock this morning while working on this. Listen to the machine. Hear the speed of the motors. But as soon as I press start, you'll hear the sound of the Capstan motor accelerating. Speed up. Slow down. That's not right. A problem with the audio control head would not cause the Capstan motor to suddenly rev up like that. Okay, so here's the entire board borrowed from another machine. If it still doesn't work when this board has been replaced, there's something else wrong, which might be something to do with the motor itself or the feedback from the motor itself. Alright, let's fathom out where all these connectors go. They're all labelled, but the wires tend to fall off these things. The cable idents keep falling off them. I think I've swapped all the cabling over. It's not been tidied up yet, so that'll need doing later, but let's hope it works, because if it doesn't, the problem is somewhere rather mysterious. Look at these labels always fall off. Okay, let's hope that's done it. And all the trouble I went through to change this switch on the other one and end up changing the whole board over. This board anyway feels a lot better than the other one. The other one had some damage at the back. It'd obviously been taken off the frame at some point. So we're at this position that we've replaced the entire servo board and we still have a servo fault. We've also replaced the audio control head, but it's not that anyway because it's going way too fast for that. So we've either got faults somewhere else or we've got two faulty panels. I think I swapped out this this is the Capstan servo or tape servo with more than one. This is number 221. Yes, I've tried multiples of these boards. All faulty? Unlikely. It's unlikely that we have several boards with the same fault, but I wouldn't rule it out because I do know that that IC has failed on the machine before. Well, that's the sort of operation I would expect if there was a problem with the audio control head. And this isn't a very good audio control head, so that might be real. Because occasionally when I was adjusting the guides or the setup for the AC head, I never got it to sync, but there were times I heard the speed change. Okay, so after some fiddling with the audio control head, I cleaned it with a bit of this stuff. And wow, let's just tweak for best sound quality. Very nice clear treble now. I think we're getting somewhere. This is normal tracking control there. Okay, I need to do some cable management and also look at this slow motion button that's not latching. I decided to set this stop motion button permanently down since I can't fix the switch without taking it all apart again, which is hard because I had to glue it. And why would you not want the stop motion button pressed? It's only so that when you press stop it reverts to terrestrial TV when it's in the stop position. But there are no terrestrial TV channels, so that's nonsense. So you'd always want that in stop motion. So I've set that permanently. There was one screw not biting here, and it turns out that the shaft is broken in many places. So that won't, even if I glue the bottom, there's nothing I can do with the top. So there's nothing much I could do about that. Not really. So that's going to have to be about it for the time being. I think we have a working machine anyway. Well, that's it. It's fully working. I mean, there's a few things I could fine tweak later, but fundamentally we have a fully working machine here now with audio video outputs, and it plays all the tapes I throw at it. Good. That was hard work. You knew I'd fix it in the end, didn't you? I'm not sure I did. Now, it's worth mentioning what these things are worth. I paid way too much for this thing. I paid £140 for it, which might have been worth it if it had good heads. But being, as it was, a bit of a basket case of spare parts, it was worth barely half what I paid for it. So, rough with the smooth, but what's it worth now? You know, in good working order with audio video outputs? Do you want to know? Best part of £1,000. And that's too much, isn't it? And actually I wouldn't sell it for double that. These things are extremely rare and precious now. You know, back in the 80s you could pick these up for 100 quid, but now, silly money. Right, before I go, I want to show you what my next project is. Now, I mentioned this in the end of my last video, and it was like, why would I buy something that takes really small tapes to play really large ones? Let me unbox it and show you what it is, and then we can go into more detail in another video. Right, after all that fuss for that 1502, what have I gone and bought now? Comes with some pretty industrial looking cables. And there's a clue, this is not domestic. There's two items here. Cosmetically very rough, lots of rust. As you would have seen from when I mentioned it the other day, it's a DAT machine. Plays digital audio tapes like that. I've already got loads of DAT machines, and generally much more modern and capable ones than this. So why is this important? Well, this is model 2500A, and the A is important. Rather, it's because it comes as a pair. There's this optional B component, and this is key. Bit worryingly, the screw's missing from it. So what this B component is, it's got various DACs and ADCs, but crucially, as well as the normal SPDIF in and out, it can accept this weird format called SDIF, where you have two channels for digital audio, and there should be a word sync port somewhere. I'm not sure which one that is. There it is, word sync. Oh, that's out. I'm not sure where the in is. Maybe that's the in. Not so certain. Then, it's a bit odd this, isn't it? The way these are numbered. So what goes on here is that I can feed this signal from a special digital audio recorder which uses Umatic tape, PCM-1630, and this, if it works or could be made to work, will then convert to SDIF. So this part may not actually be needed much, if at all, but nonetheless I will have a go at fixing the whole thing and testing it all. So that's for future video. Do please remember to like, share and especially subscribe, and I'll do a lot more content on audio video technology in the near future. Bye for now.